Now, let's be honest, there's not an awful lot of transfer news around Liverpool out there at the moment. So it's worth, I thought, looking into a different interesting aspect, another newsy angle that has come out of the club in the last week or so, and that is the appointment of Fabian Otte as the club's new goalkeeping coach. Now, we know that he's never worked with Arne Slot before, quite unlike Jiri Niemanen at Feyenoord, who was in the running for this job at one point. So what is the reason that Liverpool have settled upon Otte as their new goalkeeping coach? He's just a 33-year-old coach who I imagine won't be well known to most supporters. So I thought I'd take a little look into his background and his achievements so far to sort of get a handle on, why Liverpool have made him a key appointment to their coaching staff coming into this season and this new era under Slot. And I guess the best place to start really is his background, his experiences up to this point. Maybe start with his playing career. It's not a hugely successful playing career, and let's be honest, that's no barrier, is it, to being a successful coach? We know that. I mean, you think of Pep Linders, Jurgen Klopp, they didn't have great starry playing careers, did they? But it doesn't really matter, does it, at the end of the day? And I think it's clear when you look into it that Otte really sort of, his experiences as a player and not really playing at that elite level clearly shaped his desire to be a coach at such a young age and to get into it so early. And in terms of his playing career, he started out in Prussen Munster, which is a German third-tier club, and played a little bit there. Obviously, that's just amateur level, so not quite professional. And obviously, I think it was clear at an early stage, judging by looking at his career, that he wasn't going to make it at a high level as a professional. So he moved out to not long after starting out as an amateur, had moved out to the United States to play for North Carolina State and study at the university there. Study is a big part of his career up to this point. He really has learned an awful lot, and clearly committed himself to that aspect of his development. And it really is a story of his career, as I say. And in North Carolina, he was studying sports management alongside playing for the university. So getting the best of both worlds, really. He's developing as a player and a coach alongside doing that sports management degree out there. Now, after he'd been in America, he actually went to New Zealand quite briefly to play, and he was playing for a little while there for Western Suburbs, but also working for the Ole Football Academy, which is a highly regarded academy out there. So again, getting the element of still playing, but also getting that coaching experience, which is key. And obviously still so young at this point. I mean, he's only 33 now, so you think that he's clearly had his head screwed on in terms of wanting to get those coaching experiences. Now, he wasn't actually in New Zealand for that long initially before he came over to the UK and he was studying an international marketing degree at the University of Newcastle, and combining that with playing for Blythe Spartans, who are a local side in Newcastle. I'm sure a few of you will have heard of, semi-pro side, playing at a decent-ish level, but again, obviously not professional. But he was combining that with yet more study and getting that international marketing qualification from the University of Newcastle. And then after that, back to New Zealand for, I think, really what is basically the break in his coaching career, probably the most high-profile bit of coaching he'd done up to that point, which was working with the women's national teams of New Zealand and coaching them, and alongside that, obviously that was only a part-time role, so alongside that he was doing a little bit of lecturing at the University of Auckland. So again, combining getting the coaching experience with a little bit more working in the university. Now that obviously people start to take notice at that point once you start working with national teams and you're working with FAs, as he was with the New Zealand setup there, even on the women's side of things. And that led to an opportunity where he could go back to Germany and work with Hoffenheim. He did that for a couple of years between 2018 and 2020. He was working at Hoffenheim as sort of on the under-23 sides of things, coaching those teams. And alongside that, again, I'm going to mention more study, which is kind of incredible, really. He was doing a PhD at the University of Cologne alongside that. Now, the PhD, I'll get the title right here, it's Skill Acquisition Training in Modern Football Goalkeeping. So again, really getting into granular detail of the coaching, how you develop goalkeepers, and doing that while working for Hoffenheim. We know Liverpool facing the Champions League qualifier not too long ago, obviously a really elite level German football club. So combining those two things. Now, once he finished his study there, and he had an opportunity then to come back to England, and again a really good opportunity to join Burnley in the Premier League, and that was in June 2020. Of course, they were a Premier League side then, working under Sean Dyche, and He came in there as the first team assistant goalkeeper coach. So similar role that Liverpool have kind of had in recent years, actually. And like I say, working under Sean Dyche, which again, good opportunity to work with the likes of Nick Pope to come to the Premier League and be involved in all that. So, that was probably up until recently his most high-profile coaching job. And again, getting that at such a young age, it just showed that he's been on a really sort of upward trajectory since very early in his coaching career and got really good experience there. Now, incidentally, he only lasted a year at Burnley because he had an opportunity to go back to Germany again. I mean, real theme of his career here is a lot of travelling about, a lot of moving around, and it must be a nightmare for his family. But I think it shows a goalkeeping coach that is, again, willing to develop, willing to take every big opportunity that comes his way. And again, this opportunity was to join Borussia Monchengladbach, which again, another huge German club, aren't they? A big name out there. Now, he actually did finally settle down for a little bit longer with this opportunity. 3 years he spent there, and the plan was actually, he'd been combining that in his latter years at Borussia Monchengladbach, where he was the goalkeeping coach, with being a goalkeeper coach for the US national team. Now, the plan was that he would leave his role at Mönchengladbach at the end of this season to take up the role with the US on a full-time basis. Now, interestingly, obviously there's been a spanner thrown in the works there by the fact he's joining Liverpool, and it's going to be interesting to see. I can't imagine that Liverpool are going to want him to combine his role at Liverpool with still working with the US. I think that's going to be difficult for him, so I think he may have to row back on that opportunity and dedicate himself fully to Liverpool, because they will need a dedicated goalkeeper coach. Obviously, they've still got Claudio Taffarel, but I think that the extent of the work at Liverpool is probably going to make it hard to combine those two roles. And the fact that previously he was working, the plan was that he would work as the US national team coach on a full-time basis, and that was the reason he's leaving Borussia Mönchengladbach. I find it hard to imagine he's going to combine the two, so I think he will exclusively be Liverpool's coach. But as I say, an interesting career and journey he's been on there to get to this point, and I think that clearly the biggest opportunities he's had so far, but he does have some really exciting and interesting experience on his CV there. Burnley in the Premier League, you think of Hoffenheim and Borussia Mönchengladbach, big clubs in Germany. So he's only 33 years old, but he's seen and done a lot up to this point now. Obviously, that's just a look into his background and what his experiences have been. But I want to know a little bit more about what he's going to bring to the table, why Liverpool have been interested in him, because it's not just his experiences in the clubs he's been at, but it's what he's like as a coach and what he really can bring in terms of developing players. Now, I think from the reading I've done about him and the background I've looked into, it's quite clear. I think that he's very analytical. I mean, all that education he's done, and that he takes a really modern approach to goalkeeping coaching. Not really a huge surprise given his background, but it's interesting that there was a quote from him in an interview he did with the New York Times not too long ago, where he says, yes, he's analytical, and that is an element of his personality and the way he wants to be as a coach, but he doesn't want to just be known for that. He is, essentially a goalkeeping coach that wants to be out on the pitch and wants to do all that work and wants to be known as a coach's coach rather than just this, an analytical guy. And the quote was, I don't want to be this crazy professor. I don't want this perception that I just use science to do all of my training. So clearly that is an element of his makeup and his personality and the way he approaches his work, but it's not all about that. He wants to be, he wants those personal relationships as well. He wants to be, as I say, a coach's coach and do the developing in some of the traditional ways, as well as sort of trying to look for those, new edges and try and find, ways of coming up with ways of developing goalkeepers. Now, I think it's clear from the interviews I've read and the background that I've looked into as well that he clearly loves developing players. It's something he's really enthusiastic about, and it kind of, in the reading I did about him, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Pep Lijnders. Obviously, every time you saw an interview with him, he was so enthusiastic. That really shone through about the love for finding new ways to develop players, finding new edges, as I said, and ways to get the best out of them. So I think that's really kind of interesting, and again, will fit into Liverpool's setup if he's anything like Pep Lijnders personality-wise, that's for sure. And at Burnley, I think a big part of his job there as well was, yes, he was partly focused on first-team goalkeeper training, but as the assistant, he was an assistant to Billy Mercer there, he also was tasked with creating pathways for younger goalkeepers. Now, that kind of is, to me, quite reminiscent of the setup that Liverpool have had. Obviously, Jack Robinson was the assistant goalkeeper coach up until this summer, and that was kind of part of his role as well, as creating pathways for younger goalkeepers. I've had Jurgen Klopp speaking before as well about, they really wanted Liverpool to be almost a goalkeeper coach or a school for goalkeepers, and that's, was a big part of why they ended up adding Jack Robinson to John Achterberg to Claudio Taffarel, and they had a 3-man goalkeeping coaching team there. So, again, it really seems to me like Fabian Otte would fit into that, and he's got that sort of similar mindset. And again, a lot of what Liverpool did, and even having an assistant goalkeeper coach at the time, that was innovative, and that is again another element I think you can see from Fabian Otte in the way he looks to develop players. I mean, you look at some of the techniques he's used, and one story he tells is about using eye patches for the goalkeepers while they're training to cut off part of the vision, make things more difficult for them. And obviously if you do that, then you make things more difficult in those drills. When it comes back to having 20/20 vision and being able to see everything, it should make the reactions quicker, it should develop them as goalkeepers. So again, that innovation, it's been a massive part of Liverpool in recent years, and particularly in the Michael Edwards era, and obviously he is back in that senior role at FSG now. I think, similar things really, that they look for those elements of innovation. I think appointing a throwing coach, the brain training thing that they did recently as well around sort of set pieces and penalties. So they are always looking for that edge, and again, if Fabian Otte is of that similar mindset, then he should fit in absolutely perfect at Liverpool, shouldn't he? And should be part of this approach that they're definitely going to go and lean back into under Michael Edwards. I mean, similar to that, we know they're trying to appoint a set-piece coach this summer as well. So again, that's clearly the idea, is to get in innovative people who can find them an edge in every aspect of the play. And I find that really interesting that he is clearly of that mindset. So that, as I say, should mean that he fits in really nicely. And I think probably the best recommendation of all you can get for Fabian Otte as well is the fact that Jurgen Klopp really liked him, was very, very interested in him as well. Now, he tells a story of when Liverpool were facing Burnley in the run-in in the 2021 season. If you remember, obviously Liverpool had a bit of a centre-back injury crisis, but they won that game, and that helped them sneak into the top 4. Now, he remembers Jurgen Klopp was watching the players warming up, as he usually does, on the halfway line, and asked the kitman actually if he could speak to Fabian Otte. Obviously, he said, and the two spoke after that, and he said that Klopp had read all about him, was really interested in his work, interested in the study he'd done. Obviously, he's had a lot of published papers that he's written about his approach to goalkeeper coaching. And so Jurgen Klopp had taken a real interest in him and already knew about him when he arrived at Burnley. So again, like I say, it's a really good reference, isn't it? Because Jurgen Klopp was, he liked to surround himself with innovative coaches, talented coaches, and he'd obviously seen something in Fabian Otte. And now, obviously, Jurgen Klopp didn't need a goalkeeping coach at the time. He had a collection of coaches there, but it was someone that he was definitely interested in. And now that vacancy has opened up at Liverpool, they've made a move to bring him in. As I say, seems like a really, really good fit for Liverpool, an innovative young coach who's going to maybe bring that edge as well. And obviously John Achterberg had been there for such a long time, such a difficult coach and person to replace. Does seem to me like Fabian Otte could be a really good start. I'm very, very interested to see how he gets on. Now, of course, he is currently working with the United States national team at the Copa America at the moment. And that tournament is on to July 14th. If America get to the final, obviously they wouldn't be among the favourites to do that, but you never know. They are hosting, so that's an interesting one to see how far they get. And that could, of course, mean that he's delayed in terms of coming back to pre-season training. So a bit of a blow in that sense, but obviously it's a long-term appointment, so Liverpool will just have to kind of put up with that, I suppose, and he will arrive when he does. But once he does, very interested to see how he gets on, to learn more about him, to hear more about him, and see, in fact, how the goalkeepers react to his methods and how he works. Because, as I say, Liverpool trying to find edges in any way, and if they can make the goalkeepers even slightly better, they've obviously, we look at Alisson and Kelleher, have been brilliant in recent years, but if you can find any way of improving them, any way of just sustaining the levels, in fact, then that would be that would make Fabian Otte for me an excellent appointment. Now, of course, I'm always interested to hear what you guys think. Did you know much about Fabian Otte before he came in? What have you learned there? What do you think? Do you think he's going to be a good fit? And you're interested to see how he gets on? I'm always interested to hear from you guys and what you think. And of course, what do you think of the coaching team as a whole for Arne Slot that he's got together? Obviously, we know that Sipke Hulshoff is coming, and Ruben Peters in terms of managing that fitness as well. So, an interesting setup he's got there. Is there room for another coach with Etienne Reinen looking unlikely to come? Let me know what you think about that and the coaching setup that Arne Slot is bringing with him. I'm going to leave it there. As ever, if you can comment, if you can like and subscribe, it's always massively appreciated. And hopefully some transfer news to come soon, because it's very quiet at the moment. But if it does come, I'll be straight back on here to give you an update on that. So hopefully I'll see you soon.